As a professional photographer, you might expect me to own a huge, vast collection of lenses, wides, primes, zooms, macros, telephotos. But to be completely honest, I actually only own 2. In this video, I'm gonna break down exactly how this minimalist setup has improved my photography, made me faster, helped my workflow, and ultimately made the entire process of shooting so much more enjoyable. So let's get right into it. So first things first, this all really comes down to simplicity. Fewer gear and fewer lenses means having fewer decisions to make when you're out on set and you're in the field shooting. Owning 2 lenses, to me, just mostly comes down to this philosophy of minimalism and the fact that if I have less lenses, less things to consider, less choices to make, ultimately, I won't be overthinking things on set and I'll be able to focus on what actually matters. It provides me so much more mental clarity because when I'm capturing a photo, video, searching for a composition or a frame, I'm not kind of caught up here in my head with like, would this be better shot like on a 24mm prime or like on a 50mm or an 80mm? I can kind of bump through all of those fairly quickly and I'm not kind of caught up in like, oh, this might be like smoother and sexier at like a shallower depth of field. Another value add is that I'm never really wasting time when I'm shooting. Most of the shoots I do are outdoors, so I'm not wasting time swapping lenses from like a 24 to a 50 back to a 24. I've kind of got it all right there. Like I would say 80% of my shoots, I'm using a 24 to 70, and the odd time when I feel like I need like a little bit more reach, I'll put on the 70 to 200. So the only lens swaps I'm ever really doing is going from the 24 to 70 to the 70 to 200. But you can imagine if you had all of those in primes, there'd just be so many lenses, so much more complication, and I don't know, I just love the simplicity of only having those 2. I definitely think there's something to be said, and I'm sure you've heard this analogy that like limitations become your greatest strength, or limitations really foster and enhance creativity. And I think that's totally true in this case for gear and how many lenses that you actually own. My second point comes down to the coverage that I can get with these 2 lenses. Now, I know on the extreme and the wide end, you can get like, you know, a 10 to 18 or 16 to 35. And you can also go extremely tight and get like 200 to 600 lenses and that type of thing. But for me, my bread and butter on essentially every project I've ever shot has been between the focal lengths of 24 and 200. And so that's why sort of this like, they call them like the holy trinity, those 3 zooms, but especially these 2, the holy duo, maybe I'll call them here in this video. It just covers 24 to 70 and then it seamlessly covers 70 to 200. So you have like effectively like, you know, the equivalent of like 8 or 10 prime lenses that you'd have to carry, but only in 2 lenses. You can cover landscapes, you can cover wide, scenic, establishing shots, you can cover more like portrait, people, you know, oriented focal lengths like 50 and 85. If you really need to punch in and you need that reach, you can throw on your 70 to 200, which sometimes I do, but I would say like 90–95% of the time, those 2 lenses cover everything that I ever need, and I think everything I'm ever gonna need. And on the odd situation that maybe I need something different, I can just go to a rental house and rent it for that specific project, which once again frees me up without this aspect of owning a ton of lenses and always considering like, oh, do I need this one for this project? Should I use this one for this project? For me, this point about coverage is just ultimately from a practical standpoint, and it's just through experience, having professionally photographed, DP'd, made films for over 10 years now. I find myself very rarely needing those specialty shots where I need a ton of reach or where I need to be really wide. One example of that, just for total transparency, is I did do a shoot with Peak Performance a couple weeks back, and I wanted to go really, really wide, like fisheye. So I got a fisheye lens just for that shoot. And another example is a couple years back, I got to capture this safari expedition in Kenya, Africa. And obviously shooting like giraffes and rhinos and stuff like that, I wanted a bit more reach. So I rented, I think it was a 200 to 600 just to have that additional reach. But literally like I can count on maybe 1 or 2 hands the times in my whole career where I felt limited by that sort of coverage from 24 to 200. So I think it's a pretty safe bet, and I'd be confident to say that like for anyone looking for lenses, those are the two hands down that I would recommend the most. And my third reason here of why I only own 2 lenses ultimately just comes down to efficiency. While I'm out shooting, like I talked about before, I am shooting outdoors, often in the rain, in the cold, and I'm carrying all my gear, I'm traveling. And so it just simplifies everything so much and makes things so much more efficient just to have those 2 lenses that I'm swapping between. I only ever have 2 choices throughout the day. Am I going 24 to 70 or am I going 70 to 200? I'm not wasting all this time swapping lenses, potentially getting like dirt and dust in my lenses. I'm not carrying a massive backpack full of primes. I don't need someone standing by just to help me constantly swap lenses. So it just reduces so much friction on set. It frees up a lot of room to focus on the things on a shoot that actually matter way, way, way more, like lighting, like directing, posing talent, looking at composition, all sorts of stuff like that. The streamlined setup helps me work so much faster, more efficiently. I find compared to, I've been on sets where people are shooting primes and kind of swapping back and forth. And if you're in a studio or a very controlled environment, I don't see anything super wrong with that. But a lot of the outdoor adventure shoots that I'm doing, it's quick, it's fast paced, and so I really need to be nimble and quick and efficient with my shooting. So now that I've covered those 3 points, you'll realize that as a photographer, DP, filmmaker, you don't need 10 plus lenses. You don't need 3 or 4 lenses. Honestly, like most people I think could be totally fine with just a 24 to 70 even. It's so easy for us to get caught up in gear and in lenses and worrying about the shit that honestly doesn't really matter long term, because it's just easier to focus on that and be like, oh, that's limiting me versus like my skill sets are limiting me. I urge you to simplify your kit. I think it will help you become a better shooter. I think that minimalist philosophy and approach to creating art is really meaningful, giving yourself limitations and being able to focus on what you actually have in the moment and maximize that. I'm curious, what's your setup? Are you a photographer, DP, filmmaker? How many lenses do you have? Are you considering sort of doing a similar approach where you're stripping down your kit maybe to only bring the essential lenses out on your shoots? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you back here in the next video.